Disclaimer, this video is educational and informative in nature. Do not contact anyone shown in this video. Also, this video is discussing steroids. Do not use steroids. This is entirely for educational and entertainment purposes only. Perfect. Speaking of addictions that cripple people, my monster addiction is actually crippling me, and I don't know if I feel my fingers or toes anymore. But what else is necrotic is my sense of humor. Hannah Hussein has made a video that I think is really interesting, and I think we got to check out. Basically, it's a video on her full PED exposure as a female bodybuilder, something we've discussed through and through on this channel, but really, we rarely get an insight as to what actually goes on in a female who's competing in bodybuilding. We don't know. We're speculating, and a lot of the times that speculation could be accurate, but many times it's honestly probably not. And so this is a really unique look into what's happening in a very high level competitive bodybuilder that's changing physiologically some of the aspects of that female, and some things that maybe you could look at and say, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe if my coach is recommending me to do these crazy things, I shouldn't do them.
You guys ready for this? Because I don't know if I'm ready for this. I know y'all are ready for this.
All right, let's get into it. I think this is going to be interesting.
Hey everybody, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Hannah. I'm an IFBB pro female bodybuilder, and I've created this channel to talk about my experiences with PEDs and my full history of PED use. I am not blaming anybody in this video. I am simply giving you information. I know it was dumb, okay? That's the whole point, so you guys don't make the same mistakes. This is the video that I wish existed before I got into bodybuilding. So my first cycle was not for a show. I didn't start officially bodybuilding and or competing until my second coach. So first coach, I was just obsessed with becoming hypermuscular, and that is where our story starts. My first cycle. I don't actually know what it was. My coach at the time put me on what he said was Anavar. Looking back now and knowing what I know now, I know that was not Anavar based off the symptoms, the fact that it was an injectable, and some of the side effects that I got from it. What he really gave me was either testosterone or tren. But looking back at my social media accounts, I did not start posting pictures until 2013. This was before then, so I actually might have been around 21 years old. I am going based off memory, and I don't remember exactly the dose he had me on, but I think it was half a cc 2 or 3 times a week. He did tell me it was a new kind of Anavar that you could not find anywhere else, that it was super strong, this revolutionary, no side effects kind of drug, and then it was just gonna get me jacked. This is, again, not deflecting blame, it's just what happened. This is relevant because this kind of stuff still happens today. Ultimately, it is the responsibility of the athletes to do their own research and to educate themselves. But when you're young, and in my case, dumb, you feel invincible, and that kind of combination can spell a recipe for disaster. And the reason I know this is still happening today was because, one, it happened to me again back in 2023. I had a coach, a high level coach, approach me wanting to coach me and told me he was going to put me on tren. And he told me that the weight and the amounts and the dosages of tren that we were going to use would not cause me side effects. At this point, I knew better, and I did not use this person as a coach, but that is what he told me. And I still hear about it today in the industry. I hear about it in my gyms. I hear about it online. It's still prevalent everywhere. So to recap my first cycle, it was not for a show. There was no end goal. There was no structure. It was just the mindset of more is better. I wanted to get as muscular as quickly as possible, and he told me, this is what you do, and I listened. The side effects happened very fast. The first thing I noticed was I felt like I had to clear my throat all the time. I still kind of do that today. Then people started asking me if I had a cold. I was very small. I know I don't have pictures for you guys, but I was super skinny when I started this. I was under 100 pounds. I went from 100 pounds to quickly 118 pounds. My voice dropped fast, like fast. Giving me crap for this enlargement of certain things. It was very intriguing to you guys. The clits. My clit got bigger.
Big vagina? Gigantic vagina.
It also drastically increased my sex drive. Use your imagination, but it was very high. I also started to get pretty bad breakouts. Now, this wasn't anything like cystic acne like you would see, you know, some of the stuff online. I never got that bad, but I was always used to clear skin, so it was definitely a drastic change for me. My face looked puffy, my breast tissue looked less full, and it was so long ago that it's hard to remember, but I'm sure I was having some anxiety at that point. So to recap on my first cycle was most likely tren at 150 to 200 milligrams a week for about 17 weeks. And if I remember correctly, it took about 4 weeks for people to start noticing and questioning things. Well, one, I did gain a lot of muscle very quickly, and then obviously, my voice changed and things people started to notice. Side effects were voice, clitoral enlargement, high sex drive, acne, hair loss and growth on the body, water retention, possibly shutting off my own testosterone production.
So her first cycle right off the jump was maybe trenbolone, which is just baffling, bro. Insane. Why does this happen? Well, some people often get mislabeled products, or somebody's just trying to make a quick buck and they don't have something in stock, right? So think about it like this, okay? If you're a gas station and you make your money off of selling fluids, like liquid drinkable items, and everyone wants to buy the spring water, the mineral spring water, and that is your top seller, and you can even sell it for a higher dollar. Well, you run out one day and now you can't make any of those sales, but you get the funny idea, what if I just put the Dasani in the spring water bottles and then sell it as normal spring water at the same price, or maybe even discount it so people feel like they're getting a good deal. And you do this, you make a ton of money, nobody really notices the difference.
Money sweeter than honey, money, this money, that profit will make me wallet fat.
But when it comes to females, when a female starts using these things, it is diabolical and it's horrible for them. Obviously, if you expect to be taking one thing that maybe is a little bit softer in terms of its androgenicity, then you're expecting a certain course of action to happen, right? Something to happen in response. But then in turn, you get this massively androgenic compound that is going to massively alter your physiological traits. You get screwed. In this case, we have something just like that that's happening where she did experience hair loss immediately on her first cycle. She did experience vocal changes, which people noticed on her first cycle. I mean, these are really rapid changes, and it was her first experience being exposed to these compounds. Now, as a replacement for this, because I often get asked, what would I take if I wanted to do this? Look, first of all, terms of service of YouTube, this is all educational purposes only. This is also opinion-based content. I don't know anything, all right? I don't know nothing. But if I was a female and I had a pair of tatas, I would not be taking any androgen for my first cycle. I wouldn't even be cycling anything. I would look at the peptide market and see what's on there that is efficacious. And there are a lot of things. Basically, for me, human growth hormone checks a lot of the boxes that we need to check without causing any of these massive symptoms at all, in fact, and enables somebody to grow a lot of muscle and even create an environment where lipolysis happens really freely. These are the key hallmarks to making somebody look exceptionally good, and probably what most people are looking for when they're doing their first cycle. I doubt people really want to be like huge mass monsters on their very first cycle. They don't want to be, huge. They want to start losing hair. They want to get high blood pressure. Like, I doubt that's really the achievement people are looking for. They probably just want to be noticed. They probably just want to post a couple good pictures online. They probably just want to take their shirt off confidently on the beach. That can be done with peptides very effectively. And you don't risk endogenous shutdown of hormones, or you don't risk these physiological changes within the female body or male body for that matter. It's a really great path if you're planning to go down that enhancement route.
Now, my second coach put me on orals only. He had me on Winstrol at 10 milligrams a day. He also introduced me to diuretics, which we just used for show days. And T3. Winstrol is an oral steroid, and it's popular in the cutting phase. So it's not a great mass builder, but it's good for finishing is what they say. The diuretic that we used was called aldactazide, and that is a potassium-sparing diuretic. So when nationals came around, I actually ended up passing out backstage due to the diuretic usage. He had me take aldactazide again, which is the potassium-sparing diuretic, but he also had me cut my sodium. This is what caused me to pass out backstage. Actually, almost didn't let me go on. The side effects from that cycle, because I was already pretty virilized, meaning I had already experienced side effects, I didn't notice much physically. I did notice that I was having more depression issues. I did lose my period, but also my calories were super low at that point, and the diuretic Could have killed me, plain and simple. So to recap on that second cycle, it was 10 milligrams of Winstrol a day, which comes out to 70 milligrams a week. And then I was on T3. I believe I got up to 30 or 35 micrograms, and then aldactazide.
So right away, a nutritionist and a prep coach put her on Winstrol for her very first cycle. Now, this is, it's all very, it gets a little bit vague, okay? Because there really isn't good data on a lot of this stuff, especially long-term, outside of a few compounds, Anavar, testosterone, so on and so forth. So with Winstrol, what you tend to see is when it's applied in women, they do experience more of the androgenic side effects in terms of those physiological changes, hair loss, acne development, and other things. Most people, I think, would confidently tell you after just experiencing the field of bodybuilding that, hey, Winstrol is probably not the one you want to take if you're a gal. The other option on the table, if you are to step up to androgens, Anavar might be a little bit more acceptable. We do have long-term safety data in women and in children with Anavar, except the dosage is completely varied for what's being used in bodybuilding. And I actually don't think you need to go up that much higher than what's used therapeutically to get some amazing results. For instance, 10 milligrams a day of Winstrol, 70 milligrams a week. We've covered before on this channel as well how much androgens it takes to convert a woman into a male through hormonal conversion therapy. It's about 60 to 120 milligrams of androgens a week, varying dependent on people's side effect profiles and their ability to experience that conversion through the dosage there. So usually they start lower, titrate up as needed. That's the typical therapeutic path. This is literally smacking a person right at that dose from the jump, and it's also a highly androgenic compound. Now, Winstrol in itself is not, people have these terms for drugs, especially steroids, where they're like, this is a bulking compound and this is a cutting compound. There's really no difference. Arguably, you could say they're off-targeted effects. I mean, in sense of what they're doing that isn't just muscle growth, could be used as a benefit in certain areas. So like Winstrol is a DHT compound. It doesn't convert into estradiol, and it's good in a sense to use during a show because it's not going to add any extra water retention. But it doesn't mean that it could be not used in any other environment. For example, not getting lean, for instance. It would still be effective basically everywhere else because it's working on the androgen receptor. That androgen receptor is basically initiating the cascades of muscle growth no matter what. So it's basically usable everywhere. But when a female is taking this, you have to wonder, why aren't we taking Anavar? Because it's a DHT, it doesn't convert into estrogen. And the benefit of it is we have long-term safety data. We can know exactly what doses are usually tolerable in a grand majority of women using that safety data and prevent any further side effects. Unfortunately, that's just not done in bodybuilding.
In 2016, I got with my third coach, and he's probably the first one that I would consider a good coach. Before he let me do anything, he had me get blood work, which showed low testosterone, and that was probably due to my previous cycles. And that's when I got with an endocrinologist for the first time. It also showed hypothyroidism, which was probably due to T3 abuse. My endocrinologist at the time prescribed me 8 milligrams of testosterone. I still remember my lab showing a 7 for my testosterone at the time, so they did give me HRT at that point. In addition to the 8 milligrams of testosterone per week, he put me on 15 milligrams of Anavar, and eventually we got to 50 milligrams a week of NPP. Anavar is one of the most commonly used oral steroids for women. It's known for promoting lean muscle mass. NPP is a fast-acting version of the compound nandrolone, which is commonly known as DECA. My side effects for this cycle was I went from about 118 pounds to 130. Also keep in mind that my diet changed pretty drastically at that time too. I noticed maybe a little bit more hair loss. I did get my period back at this time, but my other side effects either remained or got a little bit worse. So to recap, I was on Anavar, 15 milligrams per day, which comes out to 105 per week. Testosterone was at 8 milligrams per week, and then eventually NPP came in at 50 milligrams per week. So the highest I went with this coach was 163 milligrams.
So even with her third coach, who was supposedly more educated, they did some blood work, they did find that she had hypothyroidism, which was definitely in most probably due to abusing thyroid, Cytomel, or T3, any of these names apply, in her previous prep. She was exceeding the dose of which is a replacement dose by going up to, I think she said 37.5 micrograms, which is about 12.5 micrograms beyond a replacement dose. Some people even take 12.5 micrograms as a replacement dose. So that kind of checks out. The blood work showed that she also had a hypotestosterone level. That basically means that she could benefit from HRT. The thing is, which baffles me, is this third coach also with that HRT, at which is 8 milligrams a week of testosterone, mind you. 8 milligrams a week. It's not 100 like that one girl we just made a video on who is saying that it's good to have 1,000 plus nanograms per deciliter levels of testosterone as a female. Crazy stuff. It's 8 milligrams a week of testosterone. This is about very close to what endogenously would be produced in a gal naturally, just in existence, in normal life. Not that crazy stuff, all right? But then on top of this, she starts taking Anavar. Okay, we just talked about how that could be good, but now she's stepping up the dose from 10 to 15 milligrams a day. And then on top of that, plus the testosterone, keep in mind, so we're on testosterone Anavar, there's also NPP, nandrolone phenylpropionate, a compound which she mentions is a fast-acting version of decadurabolin. It's another derivative of a compound that is naturally produced, especially in female bodies, but in no way is it safe for females to take, or males to take for that matter. We've also made videos. I reference a lot of videos on this channel. You guys should go back and watch because we cover a lot of shit. We've also talked about how these 19-nor testosterone derivatives tend to be more neurologically degrading and also have some really interesting effects with the amygdala and cortical thinning, which is really, really interesting. There's a lot of good data on that, especially from cattle having their hormone usage leak into water or sewage systems, and then people drinking that, getting enough trenbolone in their system to experience these effects. Really crazy stuff. But in this case, she's taking all of these compounds, really high dosage for a female, really, really high dosage. And I think people often think that,
well, if it's not testosterone, it's safer to take at a higher dose. I wouldn't take testosterone at 100 milligrams, but if it's Anavar, hey, we're fine.
no, it's still acting on the same receptor site. It's not any more selective than testosterone. And I think this is where people go so freaking wrong. It's still going to work the same way. The side effect profile is just slightly different. And so the outcome usually measurably will be basically equal to if you were taking testosterone at that dose. Just because you're taking a variation of one androgen and another androgen and smashing them together and it's not testosterone doesn't mean you're any safer. In fact, you could argue it might even be worse.
We would cycle on and off Anavar, but I stayed on my test this whole time. I did several shows with this coach and I did pretty well, but the feedback from the judges kept coming back. They wanted me to come in bigger and leaner. And of course, me being me, I wanted to be bigger and leaner. So at that point, that is when we added the 50 milligrams of NPP per week, but the feedback was still to get bigger and leaner. What I really respected about this coach was he straight up told me he was not comfortable doing the things that he thought would be required to get me to where the judges wanted me. And he encouraged me to find another coach.
Really interesting that the coach had the wherewithal to say, hey, I'm good. I'm out, fam. Because that's what I would do. I'm out, you know? I don't want to be responsible for converting someone into a male slowly. I'm just not cool with that. It's not my motto. And I don't think I ever want to be a part of that group of people because there is coaches out there that are really well known for getting females to the top level of bodybuilding, but there's a laundry list of problems with that. A lot of stuff that I don't want to really touch on in this video, but there's many coaches that have had articles, investigations, and much more done on them, which you can just look up their names and figure this stuff out, that have, names that they potentially could be tied to for people dying or passing away and lots of other stuff. You see this a lot, right? Coaches get pretty reckless because their clients want to go there to the furthest extent, right? So I don't know who shares the blame, but it's good to see that a coach is willing to say, hey, what's up, fam? I'm out. I'm good. Like, I don't want to go any further than this. Personally, that is really far for me even. The doses that were used in this case, pretty damn far.
Now, by this time, I had already had plenty of side effects and I pretty well knew what I was risking. At least I thought I did. So I started looking for coaches that were coaching women where I wanted to be. which was the Olympia stage. I ended up getting with a very well-known coach in the industry. He had tons of people that had been to the Olympia, and he immediately gave me a huge discount when I signed with him. And I want to add a note here that most coaches have incentive to get their athletes as freaky as possible, especially the ones they see potential in. The more impressive you look, the better they look as a coach. Combine that with an athlete that's willing to do whatever it takes, and you can see why there's so many deaths in bodybuilding. And that's why sometimes coaches giving you special treatment can be a red flag.
This is exactly what I just said. This is exactly what I just said. The coaches are very incentivized to get the freakiest athletes, right? So if they have a really crazy roster, a really crazy lineup of people who are super dedicated, super motivated to get to that end result, those people are going to look outstanding. And those people are going to be great before and afters for that coach. You post those, goes viral, people notice the coach, right? That client starts winning shows, people notice the coach. They start hiring that coach. Now here's the funnel and here's how it breaks down. That coach seems like he has all of the answers, but really what's happening in the background is he's just letting everybody slide in who's already a genetic monster and done a lot of the work to get to where they are. Probably 90% of the work to get to where they are. He's just polishing the edges and giving them more drugs realistically to really push up their levels, really get them to that next spot. At the end of that though is everybody else who's not getting a discount, who isn't genetically gifted, who doesn't respond so favorably to all of these things, and he just kind of throws them a cookie cutter plan, collects $500 a month from them, and checks the box and calls it good. Super common in the industry. Super, super, super common.
So I started with this coach in 2019. I did my first show with him in October of 2019. This was my first cycle with him, my first cycle that I actually have in writing because we communicated over email. This was also the first coach that I used that was not in person, so everything was online. I also switched from the figure division to the physique division at this point. 16 weeks out, we started on 10 milligrams of Anavar per day, 50 milligrams of NPP twice a week, and then that went to Anavar increased at 8 weeks out, 15 milligrams daily. That's also when we added in Novadex every 12 hours, and that was at 10 milligrams.
All right. Whew. Okay, so back to 10 milligrams of Anavar. Obviously, she's trying to get to the Olympia stage. It's going to require an exorbitant amount of work and sacrifice, and a lot of that comes in the way of femininity. You're going to have to take a lot of drugs to get to that level if you're not genetically one out of a million, folks. So this is kind of the expected territory, but let's break it down a little bit. Anavar, a DHT derivative, dihydrotestosterone. Normally, testosterone is converted by 5-alpha reductase into dihydrotestosterone. What scientists did in their little labby coats is they said, hey, let's take that dihydrotestosterone molecule and modify a little bit by adding a couple of carbon bonds and see if we can get it to not harm women and help them preserve muscle when they're going through hard times. Sarcopenia, surgery, comas, all this stuff. So they did that, put it in gals, and found that it did virilize them. But if they lowered the dose, it had some really good effects and was sustainable to some degree. That worked out. Now, relatively safe compound if used at a very low and effective dose, 2.5 milligrams a day, for example, not 10 milligrams a day. The problem is now we're putting in NPP, again, nandrolone phenylpropionate at 50 milligrams twice a week, a very supposedly non-androgenic compound, but oftentimes what you see more than ever is people experiencing a lot of the androgenic side effects from nandrolone. Bloating, potentially a very wild and perturbed mood and ability to have a state of mind that's healthy, we'll just say, right? A lot of things that aren't so great. Acne also being included in that. Then on top of that, we increase the dose of Anavar, going up even further. So she is running, Alex Eubanks' dose of testosterone basically in total milligrams of androgens. Now, furthermore, with that, she's taking Novadex, which is a SERM, a selective estrogen receptor modulator. These little guys bind to estrogen receptors and block estrogen from actually binding to that receptor site, therefore enacting its genomic effects. I'm getting way too deep, but mainly what it's doing and why coaches use it in a female, for instance, is to reduce water retention and try to repartition body fat. The assumption is that higher estrogen levels, especially in females, are going to conserve the lower body fat. And so if you want a lean lower back, lean glutes, lean hamstrings as a female, and with some of those categories, which is really important, taking a SERM, a selective estrogen receptor modulator, or an AI, an aromatase inhibitor, is pretty much the only way to go about it. Whether that's actually true or not stands to be questioned. There might be some truth to that, but also probably not. It's hard to say. Also, really important to understand about that, though, is the inhibition of estrogen. The more you imbalance androgens versus estrogens, is in a sense, the more androgenic activity you're going to tend to see, or more androgenic expression you're going to see. So if you have a gal who has extremely low estrogen and normal testosterone, she might actually experience symptoms of PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, where maybe there's some abnormal facial growth, facial hair growth, maybe there's some abnormal changes within the female body, acne and other things like that. So even further suppressing estrogen's genomic action could lead to further viralization.
At 4 weeks out, my Anavar increased to 20 milligrams daily. We started Winstrol at 10 milligrams daily, and I continued to use 20 milligrams of Novodex. He had me on Aldactone at 25 milligram tablets and Diazide at the same dosage. The diuretics were not used until a couple days out from the show. So from 16 weeks to 18 weeks out from my show, I was on 10 milligrams of Anavar a day, 50 milligrams of NPP twice a week, which comes out to 100 milligrams a week. That total was 170 milligrams a week of anabolic load. 8 to 4 weeks out, I was on Anavar at 15 milligrams a day, so 105 a week. NPP stayed the same, Novodex stayed the same. And then the final 4 weeks, I increased the Anavar to 20 milligrams a day, which came out to 140 a week. Winstrol came in at 10 milligrams a day, so 70 a week. NPP stayed the same, Novodex stayed the same. He also had me on Clen and T3 at this time. The side effects from this cycle, I went from 130 pounds to 140. At this point, I had very noticeable hair loss. That's when I really started to notice it. I had loss of facial fat volume. I lost my period again, and my sex drive was dumb, like through the roof. My side effects were I went from 130 to 140 pounds, hair loss, loss of facial fat volume, loss of period, and sex drive was absolutely insane.
And then at our highest dose, which is even more wild, there's 20 milligrams of Anavar a day, which equals 140 milligrams a week, 10 milligrams of Winstrol a day, as if that wasn't enough androgens, 70 milligrams a week, NPP at 50 milligrams twice a week, and that equals a total of 310 milligrams of anabolics. This is what I start most men out at or recommend, is maybe like a first cycle 200 to 250 milligrams. We're exceeding that, and it's getting crazy. As a female, that is genuinely crazy. She mentions that she basically experienced a lot of facial changes, hair loss, clitoral growth, a ton of issues hormonally. She lost her period, very common in bodybuilding, but also not healthy. There's nothing I could really add to this. You and I both know probably ain't good, but if it's what needs to be done for the job to get done, these people are going to do it for that $5 trophy.
I did come off all compounds in the off season after that cycle. I did end up winning my show. Then I believe COVID hit and I didn't compete again until 2021. And this next show, we decided to go full on into the bodybuilding category. Now, competing all kind of falls under the bodybuilding umbrella, but there's different categories under that. But we decided to go into the bodybuilding category per some of the judges' feedback from my last show, and also my lat spread being a very dominant pose for me, which is only in bodybuilding. And at this point, I was all in bodybuilding. I was making a living off of it. My whole life was dedicated to bodybuilding. Our next cycle was a lot more extreme than anything I had done before. We started out at 20 milligrams of Anavar per day, 10 milligrams of Winstrol a day, Remedex, which is another estrogen blocker, and Novodex starting at 8 weeks out. He also put me on some other injectables at this point, which was Primobolan at 200 milligrams a week and Mastron every third day. So my total weekly anabolic load was between orals 210 milligrams between Anavar and Winstrol, and then between the injectables Mastron and Primobolan was 325 milligrams, which brings the grand total to 535 milligrams.
Then skipping ahead here, she gets into her off-season cycle, which the total anabolic load is 535 milligrams of androgens a week. Now, keep in mind, folks, the dose to transition into a male as a female is starting at 70 milligrams a week and tops out at 125 milligrams a week. You have a female basically 5xing that for a trophy. What's going to happen? I mean, thankfully, Hannah was smart. She kept duration short. She tried to be as conscious of these things as she could. It sounds like, as much as her voice has deepened and these changes have happened to her, she really hasn't expressed a lot of them as bad as other people do, which is, awesome for her. But it's really important to understand that some people are way worse. The social media success bias is a real thing. Hannah's a pretty gal. She has an OnlyFans. She posts a lot of suggestive content and can go viral quite easily. But the gal who has, a pitted out face, lost her eyebrows, has a completely receded hairline and has to wear wigs might not be the person going viral on the internet and the one's story that gets faded out in all the noise.
I just wanted to remind people that they were doing what I asked. And I know this probably seems like a lot to some of you guys, but I assure you this is not uncommon in this industry, even for women. I've spoken to tons of pros on very similar cycles. So here is my last full cycle, meaning more than just TRT. And I want to stress that TRT is not natural, it's still enhanced, but most people in the pro bodybuilding industry do not consider it an actual cycle. 210 milligrams a week, NPP at 60 milligrams a week, and test at 7 milligrams a week, totaling 277 milligrams. My side effects were my hair was thinner than ever at this point. I was getting regular breakouts. I had full-blown cystitis symptoms, meaning pain pretty often. I was having bad anxiety and depression, but I also want to note this point in my life, I did have a major life change as well as my father passing away, so that could have contributed. I got my labs done in the middle of this cycle and it showed my estrogen at sub 15, which is so low for a female. I have gotten my labs done consistently ever since 2016 and my estrogen had never been that low before. But looking back, I can definitely see the downward trajectory that it was going. My cystitis pain became unbearable at that point. I did hours of research trying to find a connection between steroids and cystitis. I talked to other pros and it turns out that there is a correlation between steroid use and cystitis. It was just that nobody was really talking about it. In fact, I was talking to another pro and they were telling me about all their symptoms they were having, but they were still posting online for their sponsors. And that's not a dig, I completely understand that. It just goes to show the reality of this person was really struggling with the symptoms that they were having, but they were acting like everything was fine on social media. So when you see your favorite fitness influencer posting about their perfect life online, just realize that's not always the case. There can be a lot going on behind the scenes that they're not talking about.
Oh man, so she goes to explain all of the side effects that she's accumulated at this point, and they've likely progressively gotten worse and worse and worse up until the peak of which she's just describing. I mean, look, I don't think if you talked to the version of her that just started that first cycle, if you told that version of her, hey, you're going to experience all this shit, I don't think she would have done it. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe the pursuit of gains is really that strong, but I really have a strong feeling that that is the case. And if you're interested in doing steroids, it's like, man, you really have to realize the amplitude of effect that she's describing here. You change as a person, mentally, physically, physiologically, forever. And these things don't come back. You don't get them back. And if all you wanted to do is win that show and you never actually ended up winning, that really sucks. And if you just got with that wrong coach who puts you on way too much too early or too fast, it's all over. So I think this is awesome content. It's really good. And honestly, it's very truthful. It's a lot of what people are probably taking, if not more, and just not expressing it, telling you or showing you what's actually going on. Many people that you follow might be doing similar things to this. And you can imagine that if Hannah looks this good running so many things, obviously there's physiological changes, but that gal with the big glutes repping the Gymshark that's shredded all the time might be taking a little bit of this as well. Just a little bit, right? Like, it's just a little bit. I don't know. This is my opinion. So let me know what you think. Comment down below. I'd love to hear it. Thank you for the channel's sponsor. I almost forgot, Anabolic Insights. It's the best place you can go for blood work on the internet. Their user interface is actually incredible. It logs all of your labs in real time. So as they come in, you kit them and it maps them out for you. An AI reviews all lab work and actually gives you instructions and outlines as to things you could do to improve them, as well as little abbreviations basically as to what each blood marker means and what they mean in correlation to others. I mean, it's really advanced stuff. It's putting me out of a job. The link is down in the description. You can get a discount code and fat amount off. It's honestly a really great program, you guys. If you're you're paying for labs elsewhere, you're definitely overpaying. We need to be careful for our health. She said that she did her blood many other times, and throughout the whole entire period of her cycling, she was doing that. I bet she could have done more. The best way for you to make sure that you're staying healthy, if you are doing things like this, or even just a human, like check under the hood every once in a while, you know what I mean? Go get your labs done. And this is a great place to do it. They have amazing rates, like unbeatable rates, and one of the best user interfaces so that you know exactly what's going on inside of your body and can make objective decisions about your nutrition, your pharmacology use. All right, some of you out there, I know you're doing some crazy shit, and much more. Links down below in the description. I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.